For decades, Princess Anne was known as the crown's most loyal warrior, unyielding, disciplined, unquestioning. But that image crumbled overnight. What secret sparked the Princess Royal to defy direct orders from the palace? As King Charles's reign weakens and William's coronation looms, Anne's rebellion isn't just unexpected, it's earth-shaking. Behind her calm demeanor hides a decision that could dismantle the monarchy from within. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. It began with a letter unmarked, hand-delivered and sealed with the royal crest, a formal directive from the highest corridors of power, cloaked in carefully measured words and framed as a transition protocol. But Anne, seasoned by decades of service and sacrifice, saw through its velvet language. It wasn't a request, it was a dismissal. The document demanded her immediate withdrawal from all royal duties, framing it as an honorable departure. The crown expected her to disappear quietly, like a relic from a forgotten age. But Anne didn't just refuse, she responded with 6 words that shook the marble halls of Buckingham. The monarchy does not command my silence. The palace was caught off guard. William, poised at the edge of kingship, was blindsided. This wasn't in the timeline, not in the rehearsed speeches or the secret succession plans. A quiet exit for Anne had already been factored into the narrative of renewal, but no one anticipated the Princess Royal would become the first open resistor of the crown's internal recalibration. And as whispers began to swirl through the corridors, some claiming Anne had prepared for this moment months in advance, it became clear this rebellion was not born in the moment. It was premeditated, deliberate, and rooted in deeper fractures. Sources close to Anne now confirm she held a confidential meeting weeks prior with a circle of senior aides. At that meeting, she laid out a dossier of concerns regarding the direction of the monarchy, citing not just ideological divergence, but fundamental breaches of duty. She reportedly said there is a difference between evolving the monarchy and erasing it, and those who were in that room say she knew the palace would try to erase her too. Her decision to defy orders wasn't impulsive. It was the culmination of observing a system she no longer recognized, steered by hands she no longer trusted. The fallout inside the palace was immediate and brutal. Crisis phones lit up across departments. Senior officials scrambled to craft a counter-narrative. Media outlets were discreetly briefed that Anne's retirement was part of a long-standing plan, though insiders now confirm that was a flat-out fabrication. Leaks began to circulate, some suggesting Anne had grown erratic, others implying she was being manipulated by outside forces. But none of it stuck, because the public wasn't seeing an unstable royal, they were witnessing a woman reclaiming control from a system that had always demanded her obedience. And yet, Anne's act of defiance was not merely personal, it was symbolic. A quiet storm building for years had finally broken open. What the public didn't know then was that her resistance wasn't just about her own role, it was a line in the sand, a warning to William, a signal to the country. Because as Anne stood her ground, the monarchy stood divided. But Anne's bold defiance was not a spur-of-the-moment reaction. It was the climax of months of rising tension, royal betrayal. Prince William's ascension was supposed to symbolize renewal, modern, sleek, and unifying, but his private coronation blueprint reveals a shocking twist, sweeping out the old guard, including Anne. His motives, cloaked in reform, might be rooted in something darker. Is this a generational shift or a silent coup cloaked in golden robes? Behind palace walls, a covert initiative was quietly gaining momentum, its code name, Project Crownfire. Presented internally as a revitalization effort, it promised to streamline the monarchy for the modern era. But when confidential excerpts of the plan leaked, the tone was unmistakable. It was more than an upgrade, it was an upheaval. Names were listed, roles were restructured, and at the top of the list, to be retired without ceremony, was none other than Princess Anne. Her decades of unflinching service dismissed as an outdated liability. The old guard, they claimed, no longer reflected the crown's future. Anne, they said, had become a symbol of the past. But those close to her knew this wasn't just about age, it was personal. It was political. It was punishment. William's vision for the monarchy was bold but dangerously radical. His advisors, emboldened by the public's hunger for a modern institution, proposed stripping back centuries of tradition. Rituals that defined the very soul of the monarchy were labeled excess baggage. The coronation would be globally televised, reimagined as a spectacle fit for the age of influencers. There were whispers of inviting Hollywood royalty to stand beside him, while ancestral vows were quietly removed from the ceremony. It wasn't just about William becoming king. It was about William remaking what it meant to be king. And for that transformation to appear seamless, voices like Anne's had to be erased. Anne, who had served under the reign of two monarchs, could sense the shift long before the papers reached her desk. She had watched the growing influence of William's communication team, who had begun briefing foreign media outlets under embargo. Articles and op-eds mysteriously began appearing in foreign presses celebrating a fresh monarchy, praising a younger leadership unburdened by history, and subtly questioning the need for certain redundant figures. The messaging was slick, rehearsed, deliberate. It was clear a new narrative was being spun, and Anne had no role in it. The most piercing betrayal wasn't the exclusion, it was the illusion of gratitude. Publicly, William lauded Anne's contributions. Privately, his team mapped out her exit. Behind palace doors, he described her as too rigid, too loyal to traditions that bind us. And when confronted with concerns about sidelining such a foundational figure, William allegedly responded, "The crown must evolve or crumble. Sentiment has no place in sovereignty." To Anne, these weren't words of reform, they were the sounds of a crown being recast by ambition, not duty. But perhaps the deepest wound was how the plan rendered invisible her legacy. The very foundation of the monarchy that William sought to rebrand had been built and protected by Anne's relentless dedication. And now, that foundation was being gutted to make way for spectacle. Her sacrifice was being rewritten as stubbornness, her principles reframed as obstacles. She wasn't just being replaced, she was being redefined. As the inner circle began to fracture, whispers turned to arguments, lines were drawn. And Anne, never one to seek the spotlight, found herself pulled into a confrontation she could no longer ignore. Because this wasn't just about her future, it was about the future of the monarchy itself. And if she didn't speak, history would record only what William chose to preserve. But William's coronation agenda wasn't just offensive to Anne, it stirred ghosts from the past that had been buried under royal stone for too long. When Queen Elizabeth whispered her final wishes to Anne, no one was listening until now. A forgotten letter, found in a locked mahogany drawer, may hold the real reason Anne refuses to back down. What did the Queen truly want? And why does William appear desperate to suppress it? For over a year, Princess Anne carried with her a fragile, handwritten letter from her mother, a document so personal and potent that its very existence was a secret even to the closest palace aides. Its words were deliberate, imbued with the weight of a lifetime of rulership and a vision of the monarchy that transcended the ambitions of any single heir. Phrases like "protect the legacy" and "do not let them erase our duty" were underlined, emphasizing a message of loyalty not to convenience, not to spectacle, but to principle. Anne knew that stepping aside would betray that trust, that bowing to pressure would diminish everything Elizabeth had built, carefully and tirelessly, over decades. This was not mere advice, it was a commandment from the heart of the crown, and Anne took it as her guiding force. Whispers in the corridors of power suggested that William had learned of the letter long before the public did. Allegedly, urgent conversations took place behind closed doors, with aides instructed to bury references to it, to ensure that the Queen's voice could not fuel Anne's defiance. There was a sense of quiet panic in the palace, as if the letter itself had become a weapon, a moral lever capable of challenging the new vision of monarchy William sought to impose. The princess, however, was unshaken. She read and reread the lines in the quiet of her private chambers, feeling the Queen's presence in every word, reaffirming her decision to resist pressure that sought to erase her influence. The letter's impact was profound, not only on Anne but on those around her who glimpsed its contents. One royal archivist, tasked with verifying its authenticity, resigned abruptly under mysterious circumstances, fueling speculation that the document was far more than a private note. It was a revelation capable of destabilizing plans already in motion. Rumors swirled. Some claimed the Queen had foreseen a generational struggle and intentionally armed Anne with this moral compass to navigate it. Others whispered that William's fear of public scrutiny was mounting, because he realized that Anne now wielded the ultimate proof, that the monarchy's values could not be rewritten lightly. Anne's understanding of the Queen's intent was unwavering. To her, it meant that she must remain active, vigilant, and visible, not merely as a figurehead but as a guardian of the institution itself. Every decision, every public appearance, every calculated refusal to step down was guided by the inked words of her mother. And yet, the palace was not idle. Behind discreet doors, strategies were crafted to contain her influence, subtle campaigns designed to undercut her authority while maintaining the illusion of stability. But Anne's resolve had been fortified by decades of discipline and by the weight of Elizabeth's trust. The emotion Gravity of the letter also fueled her courage in confronting the internal threats posed by William's coronation plan. It transformed her from a dutiful royal into a guardian of heritage, a figure willing to risk isolation, criticism, and scandal to uphold a vision of the monarchy rooted in loyalty rather than ambition. Anne's defiance was no longer a reaction, it was a mission, a sacred duty passed from mother to daughter, impervious to the pressures and intrigues of the present day. And yet, the letter's significance was only one thread in the growing tapestry of unrest. While Anne drew strength from her mother's words, other voices, other warnings, began to reach her in whispers and clandestine meetings. Trusted figures hinted at dangers that extended beyond succession disputes, threats that reached deep into the heart of the palace's hidden machination. The Queen's guidance had been clear, but the world Anne now navigated was uncertain, fraught with betrayal and poised on the edge of chaos. But the Queen wasn't the only one who foresaw danger. Another royal figure warned Anne in secret, just before chaos engulfed the palace. As the public watches King Charles grow frailer by the day, few realized the emotional storm behind the palace gates. Sources claim Charles begged Anne to step down not for the monarchy but for William. But why? What fear grips the king so tightly he's willing to silence his sister forever? Within the walls of Buckingham Palace, tension mounted with every tick of the clock. Charles's health, once robust enough to endure decades of scrutiny, had begun to falter alarmingly. Private physicians reportedly leaked an urgent note outlining a 3-month timeline, a stark document that suggested the king's condition could soon prevent him from fulfilling even the most basic ceremonial duties. The palace, sensing the immediacy of succession concerns, convened rapid transition talks, a flurry of hushed meetings behind closed doors where advisors debated every contingency. And at the center of it all, Anne remained steadfast, refusing to yield her presence. A reminder that duty was not a simple matter of convenience or convenience. As illusion, twice she was summoned to the king's bedside, each meeting framed as a moment of reconciliation, a chance to ease the burden on her ailing brother. But Anne declined. Her refusal was not born of defiance alone. It was insistence on principle, a refusal to let the crown's legacy be manipulated by fear or personal ambition. She knew that stepping aside under pressure could render her loyalty invisible, transform decades of tireless service into a footnote, and allow William's ascent to appear unchallenged. Her choice was courageous, but it left the palace in a state of silent, simmering panic. Even Camilla, often depicted as the soothing force beside Charles, intervened personally. Reports suggest she whispered words heavy with pleading, "Please don't make this harder for him," as if Anne's compliance could somehow ease the king's suffering. But Anne, attuned to the larger stakes, understood that surrendering now would make the monarchy itself vulnerable, not just Charles, not just William. Her refusal was a subtle act of protection, guarding not only the institution but also the integrity that had defined the crown for generations. Meanwhile, William, sensing opportunity in the growing uncertainty, began quietly assuming more authority, claiming powers that traditionally would not fall to him until formal coronation. Advisors moved discreetly, preparing proclamations, adjusting schedules, and reshaping the royal calendar, all to cement his influence before Anne's defiance could be framed as public controversy. The public remained unaware of the intricate dance unfolding within the palace, unaware that behind the poised public appearances lay a storm of grief, power, and moral reckoning. Anne, however, refused to let that grief be weaponized. Every carefully calculated decision became a shield, each refusal a statement that the monarchy could not be rushed, manipulated, sanitized for appearances. The tension reached its apex in corridors seldom seen by eyes outside the palace. Senior aides whispered of explosive confrontations, of debates that escalated into arguments, of documents shifted across desks with urgency and secrecy. Anne's steadfastness was a flashpoint, a symbol of resistance that threatened to expose the very fragility William sought to mask. And yet, she bore it all with measured resolve, aware that history would judge not only the actions of those in power, but the courage of those who refused to surrender to expedience. But while Charles battled his body, Anne was preparing to fight for the soul of the monarchy, and her next move stunned the nation. Behind closed doors, the royal family assembled for what was meant to be a quiet handover. Instead, they were met with fire. Princess Anne walked into the private council meeting with documents, declarations, and a warning: "If you force me out, I will go public." What followed was chaos and betrayal. The room, expected to hum with polite exchanges and careful diplomacy, became a battlefield in seconds. Anne confronted William, Charles, Camilla, and select senior royals with an intensity that left seasoned aides reeling. She produced historical documents outlining succession obligations, dusty scroll, and legal manuscripts that traced the monarchy's sacred duties across centuries. Every page she revealed was a reminder that tradition was not merely ceremonial, it was binding, a pact of accountability, a tether to history that could not be ignored. Anne's voice, calm yet unyielding, warned that she was prepared to expose discrepancies in William's coronation timeline, a revelation that could ignite public outrage and parliamentary scrutiny in equal measure. Camilla, who often acted as the voice of mediation, erupted in frustration. "You're sabotaging everything," she shouted, her words ricocheting off the gilded walls. It was an eruption that revealed the fragility beneath the palace's poised exterior. But Edward, ever the quiet observer until now, stood firmly with Anne. "She's not wrong to question this," he declared, a line that cut through the tension like a blade, shifting the room's energy and highlighting the fractures in what was presumed a united front. The clash was not just political, it was deeply personal, a collision of loyalty, power, and legacy that exposed the raw nerves of a family whose public unity masked private turmoil. The meeting dragged on with no resolution. Argument spiraled into pointed accusations. Whispers of betrayal grew louder, and the clock ticked with relentless cruelty as every moment of delay amplified the stakes. Outside the council room, aides exchanged anxious glances, knowing that any leak could unravel carefully crafted narratives. And when the meeting finally concluded, media outlets reported only an unplanned delay in the coronation, a phrase that hinted at disruption but concealed the full extent of the confrontation. Anne walked away, resolute, aware that she had staked everything on principle and that her defiance would echo far beyond the palace walls. Yet while the palace tried to mend itself from within, the media world outside smelled blood, and a royal insider was ready to leak it all when a high-level palisade mysteriously resigns and vanishes from public view. The press chalks it up to burnout until a classified memo is leaked days later. The contents, a blow-by-blow of the council meeting and Anne's ultimatum. What else did the whistleblower know, and who are they protecting? The memo, circulated in the shadows before finding its way to investigative journalists, confirmed what insiders had only whispered. Anne's accusations of constitutional breaches were not exaggeration or rebellion, they were fact. Every claim she had raised, every historical precedent she cited, was meticulously documented, proving that the palace had skirted long-established protocols in preparation for William's coronation. The memo revealed chilling details. William's team had bypassed traditional parliamentary channels, moving forward with authority that would normally require decades of approval, consolidating power in a manner both unprecedented and perilous. Even more explosive were the revelations about a deliberate media cleansing campaign targeting Anne. Internal communications, outlined in the memo, showed a strategy to undermine her reputation, portraying her as resistant to progress. Stubborn, even destabilizing. The whistleblower, fearing their own career would be sacrificed as a fallout shield, had chosen to expose the plan before Anne could be publicly discredited, sacrificing anonymity to ensure the truth surfaced. Each page of the memo painted a picture of calculated manipulation, strategic leaks, selective press coverage, and a tightly coordinated narrative, engineered to isolate the Princess Royal while elevating William's authority. The palace's initial response was swift and predictable: denial. Statements labeled the memo as misinterpreted internal notes and unauthorized speculation, attempting to contain the potential fallout. But as the leaks spread, silence fell like a velvet curtain, punctuated by sudden legal intervention that prevented further discussion. The strategy was clear: bury the scandal before it could metastasize, obscure the origins of the memo, and control the narrative from within. Yet for Anne, the leak served not as a threat, but as validation. It confirmed that her instincts had been right, that the forces aligned against her were real, deliberate, and dangerously coordinated. The tension within the palace escalated as aides scrambled to assess the damage. Discussions that had previously been private became urgent and fevered. Senior figures debated whether to confront Anne publicly to force compliance or to craft new channels to marginalize her influence. And yet, despite the relentless pressure, Anne remained unwavering, reading the memo as both warning and vindication, knowing that the stakes extended far beyond her own position. Her defiance was no longer merely personal, it was emblematic of the monarchy's integrity, a stand against a creeping centralization of power that threatened to rewrite history. In real time, And just as the royal machine began to spin, trying to bury the scandal, Anne pulled a final move that no one, not even William, saw coming. She stood alone. No title, no uniform, no royal backing, just Princess Anne and a microphone. In her unannounced public address, Anne not only rejected William's coronation plans, but reignited loyalty to the monarchy's oldest values. What she said wasn't just powerful, it was a declaration of royal war. The speech began with a tone of measured authority, yet every word carried a spark that set the palace and the nation on edge. Streamed live without prior approval, it bypassed centuries of protocol and sent shockwaves through the carefully curated image of the monarchy. Anne spoke of duty over dynasty and legacy over ambition, framing her message as a defense not of herself, but of the institution she had served relentlessly for decades. Her voice rang with clarity and conviction. Each phrase a subtle indictment of a monarchy she feared was being reshaped into a spectacle for personal glory rather than national continuity. Her lines, while composed, were piercing. She referred to a marketing monarchy, an unmistakable critique of William's approach, painting it as superficial, attention-seeking, and dangerously detached from tradition. The words were both personal and public, and the implications reverberated far beyond the palace walls. Across social media platforms, reactions surged as #StandWithAnne began trending globally. Ordinary citizens, royal enthusiasts, and historians alike were captivated by her courage, seeing in her speech a rare fusion of principle and defiance. It was a moment that reframed public perception, elevating Anne from a dutiful royal to a symbol of resistance and moral authority. First, inside the palace, aides scrambled desperately. Communications teams worked frantically to contain the fallout, to spin the narrative, to prevent the speech from undermining William's carefully orchestrated plan. Leaks were intercepted, media briefings hastily convened, yet the momentum could not be stopped. Every attempt to damage control only amplified the intensity of Anne's message. Her words had found resonance, exposing a fissure in the royal image that had been long hidden behind ceremonial pomp and curated appearances. And Parliament reportedly took notice, with sources claiming that officials were quietly reviewing coronation protocol. In the aftermath, assessing whether the unprecedented disruptions and public outrage warranted formal scrutiny. Anne's address, intended as a personal assertion of loyalty and principle, had inadvertently ignited institutional reflection. It was a speech that blurred the line between public engagement and political consequence, transforming a single moment into a defining chapter. In the monarchy's ongoing struggle between tradition and transformation, the impact was immediate, visceral, and impossible to ignore. While William had sought to modernize, to control the narrative, Anne had reclaimed the story entirely, reminding the world that authority is as much moral as it is ceremonial. Her courage reverberated not only through the halls of the palace but across the collective consciousness of a nation deeply invested in its royal legacy. Her voice, fearless and unwavering, had shifted the balance of power, revealing that legacy cannot be rewritten with ambition alone. But Anne's bravery came at a cost, and it would be her relationship with William that would suffer the most in the aftermath. In a private confrontation captured by palace surveillance and allegedly leaked by another insider, William and Anne's final clash wasn't about titles, it was about betrayal. Words were spoken that can't be unsaid, bonds shattered, and in the end, only one walked away believing they still served the crown. The room was charged with tension the moment Anne entered, her posture unwavering, her gaze steady, knowing full well that the next moments would define not just the future of the monarchy but her place within it. William, flanked by aides who had been silent observers until now, demanded that Anne issue a retraction, an official acknowledgement that her critiques, her defiance, and her public speeches were unfounded and damaging. But Anne refused. Her refusal was not rooted in stubbornness. It was a moral declaration. She accused William of rewriting history for applause, of crafting a legacy for himself while attempting to erase decades of her steadfast dedication and the principles that had sustained the crown. The exchange became intensely personal. William, usually composed in public, broke down, revealing raw emotions that had been simmering for decades. He confessed to feelings of being overshadowed by Anne, of living in the shadow of her accomplishments, her discipline, her unwavering commitment. The words hung in the air like a lightning strike, exposing fissures in a relationship long assumed to be bound by family and duty. Anne, hearing this confession, did not soften. Instead, she challenged him with a line that would echo through palace history. You'll wear the crown. But will you carry its weight? Every syllable carried the weight of accountability, responsibility, and a warning that power alone could not legitimate a reign. Catherine, ever the diplomat, attempted to mediate, to bridge the widening chasm between the two royals, but her interventions were silenced, brushed aside by the intensity of their confrontation. Neither sibling was willing to yield, neither would back down. The room, once a place of decorum and careful tradition, had transformed into a crucible, where family, loyalty, and authority collided with unrelenting force. Every glance, every pause, every unspoken accusation amplified the stakes, making the encounter not just a personal battle, but a defining moment in the monarchy's unfolding drama. Finally, the confrontation reached its breaking point. William, exhausted, frustrated, and unmoored by decades of comparison and expectation, turned toward Anne and spoke the words that would sever more than conversation. "Then you're no longer one of us." It was an utterance heavy with exile, a declaration that despite shared blood, shared history, and shared duty, he could not reconcile her defiance with his vision of the monarchy. Anne, resolute and unbowed, absorbed the weight of the words, recognizing that familial bond had been tested, strained, and fractured beyond simple repair. The aftermath was palpable. Silence settled over the chambers in a way that felt heavier than any confrontation could convey. Alliances had shifted, loyalties had been questioned, and the very foundation of the royal narrative had been shaken. The private conflict, though unseen by the public for now, set a precedent, a warning that obedience could no longer be assumed, that principles could defy titles, and that the path to power was littered with unseen confrontations and moral reckoning. And yet, while this may have seemed like the final act, the world was left wondering, was Anne's war really over? Or had it only just begun? The palace stands B. Yet the foundation is fractured, with Princess Anne exiled in silence and William's coronation clouded by controversy. The question remains, can the monarchy survive its own bloodline? Or has the war between legacy and loyalty become the beginning of its final unraveling? Across the nation, public opinion has fractured into distinct camps. On one side are the modernist monarchists, enthralled by William's vision of a sleek, media-savvy monarchy, eager for spectacle and reinvention. On the other are the traditionalist loyalists, drawn to Anne's steadfast defense of duty, legacy, and the timeless principles that have long underpinned the crown. This division is no mere debate. It has become a visible schism, played out across social media, talk shows, and even private dinner conversations, leaving the monarchy caught between two competing definitions of its identity. Even as Anne retreats from official duties, her influence continues to ripple subtly through patronages, alliances, and discreet networks of supporters who value her judgment and moral authority. She has become a quiet force, unseen by most, yet impossible to ignore, her legacy shaping decisions, her opinions subtly guiding traditionalists who fear the monarchy might lose its soul. Meanwhile, William proceeds cautiously, aware that every move is scrutinized, every adjustment dissected. Reports indicate he is preparing for a scaled-back coronation, reimagining the ceremony to minimize conflict while projecting stability, yet the tension remains palpable as his authority faces both internal dissent and public skepticism. The pressure is not only domestic. Foreign media outlets, long deferential to royal protocol, now question the monarchy's relevance and stability. Headlines hint at instability, at an institution vulnerable to internal strife, and speculate on the implications for international diplomacy, charitable initiatives, and the crown's enduring global symbolism. The scrutiny magnifies the stakes. Every decision, every delay, every subtle concession becomes fodder for debate, amplifying the sense that the monarchy is not simply a family in crisis, but an institution at a crossroads, its future uncertain. Within the corridors of power, whispers of constitutional reform grow louder. Parliamentary aides and legal advisors quietly examine succession protocols, authority limits, and ceremonial prerogatives, debating whether recent controversies necessitate formal intervention or adaptation. The palace, long accustomed to operating in shadows, now faces the delicate challenge of managing tradition, public perception, and political oversight simultaneously, each element threatening to unravel the fragile equilibrium that has held for centuries. Amid this tension, a cryptic royal statement begins circulating, signed only AR. Its contents are vague, yet loaded with implication, a reminder that power, loyalty, and authority are far from settled. Insiders speculate on its meaning, its origin, and its intended impact, but certainty eludes everyone. The message becomes a spark, a symbol of unresolved conflict, a harbinger of decisions yet to come. It is a reminder that the monarchy, despite its ceremonial grandeur, is vulnerable, human, and perpetually caught between ambition, principle, and inheritance. And as the crown teeters between two destinies, one question echoes louder than any royal anthem: when loyalty becomes rebellion, who truly wears the crown? Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.